Are you tired of being locked up in your house waiting for this virus to end? Are you at wit's end? Do you feel like putting on hand puppets and pretending to be a classic cartoon character and letting fidget spinners decide your every action? Then, man, do I have an RPG for you. TSR's Bullwinkle and Rocky game. That's right, the makers of Dungeons & Dragons created a licensed role-playing game in the world of Frostbite Falls, and you can live out all your cartoon fantasies in it. At least without people staring at you. Well, at least not as much as you did it without warning. I'm Mr. Welch. Welcome to my Mad Musings, where today we are playing Moose and Squirrel. Bullwinkle and Rocky was created in 1988 and written by the legendary Zeb Cook. Sue Myers did the art, and was done in the style of the classic cartoon, so it's deliberately simplistic. As much as you like the show, Rocky and Bullwinkle was not known for its art. What this game is known for is the puppets. Since you are only playing the characters from the show, you are provided hand puppets, so you can show which character you are playing. Not that we wouldn't already know. Okay, to be completely honest, this is not a game you play sober. This game has no creation system. You are playing one of the characters from the show, not just Rocky and Bullwinkle, but there's Boris and Natasha, Dudley Do-Right, Snidely Whiplash, Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and a whole bunch of other characters you've probably forgotten by now. It's a storytelling game at heart. You pick which setting you are playing in and then dole out the characters as needed. You can adventure in Frostbite Falls, Canada, the Fractured Fairy Tales, the Aesop and Sons, or go historical with Sherman and Mr. Peabody. Then you start piecing the story together. Each player is dealt 5 story cards with the rather large deck of plot points, and then you start telling the story. When it gets slow, somebody can play a card from their hand to introduce a plot point. The plot cards are all over the place, with things like drugged drinks, brilliant ideas, the guide to everything good and true, a valuable inheritance, or you have Mr. Big making an appearance. The game is cooperative, so everybody is trying to contribute to the story. The other part of the game that people will remember is the spinners. This is a diceless RPG, years before Amber ever came out. Each character has a spinner that determines success or failure. The format is beyond simplistic. You spin the dial and hope it lands on yes. If it does, then you succeed in your task. If it lands on no, you fail in your task. There is a greater chance of landing on no than yes, and the less important the character was in the show, the smaller their chance of success. Quite literally in this case. The game is at heart a comedy RPG. There's no death. For that matter, there's no hit points or anything similar. The narrator determines the results of a failure, but it's never anything crippling. You're trying to capture the spirit of the TV show, though getting the biting social commentary is usually not required. As the game is largely cooperative, the point is to have fun. You aren't leveling up Rocky to a second-level Squirrel. He's always going to have the same abilities every single game. The characters do have some variation in their abilities. Each one has advantages and often a disadvantage. Rocky can fly and he's nimble, but he's also a terrible judge of character. Bullwinkle is strong, can remember anything he ever ate, and can predict the weather, but he's dumb as a brick. These are, of course, for storytelling purposes. If you're trying to power game an RPG that has you wearing a hand puppet, maybe you need to rewatch the part where I tell you not to play this game sober. The rules aren't complicated. The rulebook itself is only 16 pages long. Remember, this is TSR, the king of bloated rule systems. But considering the game also kept the written parts to an absolute minimum, there's probably a reason for this. The rest of the books are a setting book, which is also equally brief, covering Frostbite Falls, and there's another book consisting of plot ideas to play with. There are some funny props, like diplomas from the Ukrainian School of Lockpicking and a diploma from What's a Matter You, but again, these are just props, they're just for fun. The game itself is easy to find. It's not in great demand. You either have to be a massive Rocky and Bullwinkle fan, and you're collecting it for that reason, a TSR completionist, or you're looking for a decent game that you can play totally blotto without worrying too much about looking silly. Unless you're playing Sherman and Mr. Peabody and you decide to resolve some daddy issues right there in the front of the entire store as you decide to go into self-therapy and explain to your hand puppet pseudo-father all the mistakes he's made raising you and you've never earned his love despite all your attempts to please him. I'm sure that helped Chris out in ways that he no longer needed to address, but let me tell you, that was a bit jarring for the rest of the players at Frontier Games. But I digress. If you want to go out and buy a copy of Bullwinkle and Rocky, it's on eBay, brand new, for about $25. The problem is it's about a TV cartoon that started in the 50s. It's been out of the public eye for some time unless you watched that movie a few years back that no one will admit they watched. I mean, how many Gen Xers are showing this cartoon to their kids, or the boomers to their grandkids? If you have fond memories of the show, it will take you back to your childhood, but it's a tough sell to younger crowds. Unless you just want it for the hand puppets and spinners, in which case it's a steal. This is one of the shortest Mad Musings I've done, if not the shortest. Bullwinkle and Rocky is deliberately simplistic. There's no expansions. There's not a nuance for a game about a 60-year-old cartoon character. You put on the hand puppets, you draw the cards, you spin the spinners, you weave your story. The props are certainly a huge plus in the game's favor in terms of collectivity, but if you have no interest in the setting, it's just a curiosity. Next time on Mad Musings, I'm jumping back into Fantasy Flight's greatly in-demand 40k line with Death Watch, the Space Marine RPG. But until then, touch me, I want to feel dirty.